Hi, guys. This is Saturday morning, the end of the first week after the Israeli war started with Gaza. And I posted a video on Hamas scriptures where they're actually mentioned by name. And several of you asked about the other part of the prophecy about Lebanon. So we wanted to talk about that today. So let me just go ahead and bring up my scriptures. Just going to do a real short study on it. So this is Obadiah chapter 1. Let me make sure I get this where we can read it good. Oh, wrong one. Okay, that's better. Okay, so Obadiah chapter 1, and this is talking about Edom. And ancient Edom was the Esauites, descendants of Esau, brother of Jacob, and they were basically destroyed a long time ago. So a lot of people look at this and say this is all about ancient Esau. It's over, done, got nothing to do with anything. But the medieval rabbis, it's interesting to look at, they connect Edom with Rome. Not necessarily Roman Catholicism, but the Roman Empire, the ancient empire of Rome. Not that Edom took it over, it actually took over and destroyed Edom. But the question remains, and we won't get into that today, but the question remains, is this first part referring to Edom of old and or the Roman Empire? And we'll talk about this in future times about the reconstitution of the Roman Empire, a revival of the Roman Empire, which we talk about a lot. And I think a lot of people don't quite see how it works because a part of it has not happened yet. Anyway, so this first part, verses 1 through 9, and then verses 10 to 14 basically talk about the destruction of Esau, Edomites, because of what they did to Israel. But I want to focus in on this last part. And this is interesting. Starting in verse 15, it says, "For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen." Now, this word or this phrase here, day of the Lord, most of us understand that's meaning the tribulation period, the 7 years right before the second coming. Okay, so the fact that this is near upon the heathen is not that it's here right now. So, what they're going to talk about is stuff that happens right before the day of the Lord occurs. Now, right before prophetically could be 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years, or in this case, probably over 100 years, because things in this prophecy have happened back in 1948, we're going to look at. So, the day of the Lord or the tribulation period is not here yet, but it's going to happen in the near future. So, in that setting, this prophecy is probably right about now or in the next few years. So it says that for the day of the Lord is near upon the heathen. A heathen is a non Jewish Christian person, somebody that's, and specifically somebody that's hostile. As you or thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Your reward will return upon your own head. So we see this all over the scriptures. If you attack Israel, you will be attacked, not necessarily by Israel, but God's revenge. So you will be punished, in other words. And this happened, all over. So verse 16 says, "As you have drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, you shall drink, and you shall swallow down, and they shall be as thou hast not been." So there's a group of heathen, and again, heathen is just non-Jewish, non-Christian, and there's peace-loving heathens and war-making heathens and all sorts of different heathens. We're not talking about the entire world other than just Israel. We're talking about a group of heathen or non believers, violent people. And they have, I want you to look at this phrase here, they have drunk upon my holy mountain. The holy mountain is Jerusalem, it's the Temple Mount. So there is a non Jewish, non Christian group, religious group, that does rituals like drinking, and we're not talking about necessarily drinking, but some sort of a ritual, some sort of a sacrifice, some sort of a thing that happens on the Temple Mount. And we have mosques on the Temple Mount now, and they've been there for 1400 years or maybe not that long, but quite a while. So there is a group of heathen, non-Christian, non-Jewish group that do rituals on the Temple Mount when the day of the Lord is near. So sometime during this time period. And if we went back and had time, we'd look at the early church fathers and see what they consider to be the end times. And the end times begin with the revival of the state of Israel and go forward. So we've been in the end times, or as they call it, the birth pangs, for 75 plus years, 70 to 80 years, since 1948. So that's, again, that seems like a long time, but it's actually not that long when you talk about an una or 500-year period, something like that. So there are these heathen on the Temple Mount. Okay, they apparently do something bad to be attacked. In other words, they attack, and it will be eventually as they had not even been. So they'll eventually be gone. But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. Now, the house of Jacob is Israel, and they're supposed to control a lot of land that they don't at the moment because probably of this heathen group or maybe other heathen groups. But there shall be deliverance through Mount Zion or through Israel. It shall be holy, which is peaceful. The violence will stop, and the house of Jacob will possess what it's supposed to possess. Now, in verse 18, it says, the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. The house of Esau shall be stubble, and they that shall kindle them shall devour them, and they will not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken it. So the Esauites are the basic people from the mountain of Esau, and that's Seir, which is southern Jordan, that area down there. So they come up when Israel's gone with the dispersion with from Rome. They're out of the picture. They come up and populate the area of Israel, also called Palestine, also called Canaan. It's had many names over the centuries or over the millennia. And so Israel comes back, and we have this populace. Some of them are peaceful, some of them are not. And Israel has to deal with them. But now, Jacob is Israel in general, shall be a fire. They will kindle and destroy their enemies. What always confused me is you've got Jacob here, and then you've got Joseph. Joseph is one of the sons of Jacob. And I never understood why Jacob and Joseph. And looking through the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the things that I noticed is that Jacob is usually talking about Israel, non messianic usually, but not necessarily. Now, Joseph, on the other hand, originally when the Melchizedekian priesthood was split up, Judah got the king right. And we know Jesus came through the line of Judah. The priestly line went through Levi. So remember, Jacob had 12 sons. So Judah, Levi, and then Joseph originally ran the school of the prophets, so the prophetic aspect of it. So this could be saying that by this time, the school of the prophets are back with Joseph. Now, that could be as simple as we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, so we have the prophecies, or it could be something else. But it's interesting how now it kind of makes sense. Still not absolutely sure what that means, but something along those lines. But anyway, verse 18 is that when all this happens, Jacob or Israel, along with the prophecies that come all in 1948, um, affect everyone over there. Now, the thing I want to share you with here is this last part, starting in verse 19. 19 to 21 is all about our time period. So basically, we've seen that Esau is connected with the Roman Empire somehow. There are old Esauites, children of actually Esau. Those are gone, or the descendants are now non-Israeli citizens in Israel, or something like that. Bill Salas takes that view also, that the remnant of Esau is actually the Palestinians. And I think mainly because he gets that from the Psalm 83 prophecy, which is a different prophecy we're not looking at today. But anyway, the terms are similar. So in verse 19, I want you to focus in on this. So there's going to be a war. Israel's going to return. They're going to eventually, apparently in pieces, take back all of their land. So it says, they of the south. Now, this word for south is actually Negev, and it can just mean south. It could be Teman, it could be Saudi Arabia, it could be the South Pole, just going south. But it's specifically the name of the Negev Desert, which is southern Israel. It's like if we had in the United States, between the United States and Mexico to the south, if we had a great big desert and we called it the South Desert as opposed to the North Desert, it's that kind of an idea. So this is actually the word Negev. And so this is kind of important. So they of the Negev, or the south, shall possess the mount of Esau. They of the plain, there should be commas in here, the Philistines, and they shall possess the fields of Ephraim and the fields of Samaria. So at this point, we stop at this point here. This part should actually be in the next verse. This verse I'm submitting to you has already happened in 1948. So basically, what happens is when Israel becomes a nation in 1948, there are people that live in the southern part of Israel. They pick up and flee to the mountain of Esau. That's Jordan. Okay, that actually happened. Some of the native population went to Jordan. They of the plain, okay, the Philistines. Now, the Philistine area, if you remember in Judges, you've got Samson fighting the Philistines, and he fought Goliath, or David fought Goliath, who's also from Gath of the Philistines. It's that same area. So, Gath of the Philistines, that we learned in the Hamas prophecies we did a couple days ago, is actually what we today call the Gaza Strip. So, you've got people in the plain that pick up and go to the area of the Philistines. So, that creates the Gaza Strip. And then you've got other people that shall possess the fields of Ephraim and the fields of Samaria. Well, Ephraim and Samaria put together is the area of the West Bank. So this is talking about the time when Israel comes back. The populace basically picks up some of the populace. Some of the people stay there, but a good majority of them pick up and they move and form groups of people in Jordan, in the Gaza Strip, and in the West Bank, which happened exactly as prophesied. And I'm saying 1948, but 1948 through 1967, the movements and all this, but it starts in 1948. So this next part here, actually this whole part here I'm submitting to you is yet future. And this is what happens, because we were talking about Lebanon, we'll see it in a minute. Benjamin, which is another tribe of Israel, Benjamin shall possess Gilead. Okay, so let me stop for just a moment. We're going to go to, this is a book that I wrote back in 2008. It's called Ancient Prophecies Revealed. And what we did was we took um, 500 prophecies, starting from the very beginning all the way through the time of the Antichrist, and we put them in chronological order so you can see and get the idea that prophecies aren't just Sunday school fables. They actually took place, and if you follow them out, you'll eventually get to a place where you remember, I was at home watching that on TV. I remember when that happened. So a lot of us that are, like 50 years or better, remember a lot of the things with Israel. Especially if you're 80 or 90, you might even actually remember the formation of the state of Israel and things like that. But so this is about one of the upcoming wars that has not happened yet, maybe beginning to happen. We'll see. But this is Israel as of 2008 when we wrote the book. So this top map here. So this is Israel, the lighter part, and here's Nazareth, and here's Haifa, and this is basically the Sea of Galilee. And then between Israel and Syria is the Golan Heights. That's where Og, the king of Bashan, was. And that's prophesied. There's actually several prophecies in the Old Testament about this in our time period, but you would have to know its old name. So you look up the prophecies of Bashan and see kind of what happens. Uh, we've talked about that before, and we'll go over this again. But there's a series of wars that are fought over the Golan Heights, half of which have happened already. The other half have not. So anyway, down here at the bottom of this is after this Obadiah prophecy takes place. There's pieces of it in Obadiah, Zechariah, Zephaniah, and others, but we're just looking at Obadiah today. So this area right here is the old area of Gilead. So somewhere along the line, Benjamites, somebody from the tribe of Benjamin, come and colonize this. Now, I just kind of put this here because it matches here. So I don't really know how much of this area is going to be, but some part of it. Today, right now, as you can see, this is the tip of Jordan. So right here, and this would actually, it might have something to do with the Temple Mount. I don't know. But this area is going to be taken and controlled because of problems. So anyway, so that's Benjamin. Okay. So let's go back to here. It says, Benjamin shall possess Gilead. Now, the next verse, verse 20, says the captivity. Captivity can mean captive in a cell or banished. Either way, you can't be here in our society. And in this case, we're talking about not the Babylonian captivity, which is an incarceration, but we're talking about the Roman expulsion. So those people that were expulsed from Israel by Rome come back. And again, that was 1948. And the prophecy, a lot of people say, well, that's not true because these are refugees from a Khazarite kingdom. They're not real Jews. Well, the prophecies in Daniel and other places talk about Israel, the real Israel, returning and reforming their nation. And the event is supposed to take place on our calendar would be 1948. So, whatever group of people that call themselves Jews that actually managed to create a nation in 1948, that's the real Jews, not fake ones. So, that should put that kind of stuff to rest. But anyway, we'll go on. So, the captivity of the host of the children of Israel, that group of people, okay, they come back and it says they shall possess that of the Canaanites. That's the entire coastline. It may or may not include Gaza, but I would assume so because the Canaanites were at war. There's many stories and historical notes of Canaanites being at war with Egyptians. So the border between Canaan and Egypt is one line. There's no country between them, right? So if Egypt is its own thing, wherever the Egyptian border is, then starting up that way should be Israeli territory. So that would include the Gaza Strip. But the important part is this: they possess the land of the Canaanites up to and even including Zarephath. Now, you remember the prophet Elijah raising the widow's son, and this was at Zarephath. So, let me show you on the map again. So, here's the current border of Israel to the north. Now, if that expanded to Zarephath, this is where it would be here. Right here is Zarephath. It's currently called I think it's Saffron, Egypt, Libya. Excuse me. Um, right here. So I think it's Saffron, Lebanon is what I'm trying to say. So right here, and again, this is not a for sure line, but somewhere along that line. So you've got Tyre and Sidon, for instance, on either side of these, and one of them becomes Israeli territory and the other one does not. And this makes sense. If you have enemies that consistently wait a few years, gather up a bunch of weapons, and then rain down rockets, and I've said this before, if the rockets hit dirt, then you can kind of ignore that. Once the rockets get guided missile systems and hit the buses with little kids and hit the houses, and you can't allow that to happen. You have to somehow permanently stop it, and that would be to take this territory. The old law of Moses says that you take the territory of someone that attacks you, and it becomes Israeli territory, becomes the buffer. Because if the missiles and stuff can travel this far, then you need that much of a distance between you and them so they can't hit your people, and that's always been the way it's always been. So this is southern Lebanon though. So in other words, they control the coast all the way up to Zarephath, which is right here. So this part right here. So with that in mind, let's continue. It says the captivity of the host of the children of Israel shall possess all the land of Canaan, or Israel, or Palestine, the coast, okay, even as far as Zarephath, okay, and the captivity of Jerusalem. So the people that were in Jerusalem that left during the Roman expulsion, which currently is in Sepharad. Now, Sepharad is the even modern Hebrew word for Spain. So the Jews that were in Jerusalem that fled and became Sephardic Jews is what they're called. Sepharad, Sephardic Jews, Spanish Jews. They dwelt in Spain. Now, in 1492, there was an expulsion from Spain. Convert, leave, or die was what the king and queen said. So a lot of people left. Some of them stayed and pretended to convert, and some did convert and stuff like that. But there are groups of these people in other areas of the planet. The Israelis know where they're at. I know where some of them are, but basically they will eventually return. And so the captivity that left Jerusalem, that went to Spain, in other words, shall come back and shall possess the cities of the south. That's the Negev. This has always been a problem because there's no water. It's a desert, and there's really no way to. I mean, there's plenty of water in the Mediterranean, but it's salt water, so it's really hard to figure out. And it was a number of years ago, about 10, 15 years ago, I think it was, that the Israelis figured out this new, very cheap way of creating drinkable water. And they were going to give it to everybody in the area so they could plant crops and do that kind of stuff. With that new technology, it now would be possible to colonize the Negev. I remember Ariel Sharon saying if everything went as planned, no wars, no problems, they could probably colonize the Negev by 2025. I remember him saying that. Now, there's been all sorts of wars, so that's never really happened yet, but it is possible now. So that's pretty interesting. And then it says, the Savior shall come up upon Mount Zion. Savior is not spiritual, but like generals that save you from a war. Generals basically shall come up upon Mount Zion and judge the Mount of Esau. And again, we're some sort of empire type thing we're talking about. And the kingdom shall be the Lord's. So this particular part here is interesting. So you've got, just to recap, Israel comes back in 1948. People from the area of Israel go and form the Gaza Strip, go to Jordan, and come up and form what we call the West Bank. Now, later in time, many, many years later, Benjamin will come and possess Gilead. Israel will control the coastline all the way up through southern Lebanon to the ancient area of Zarephath. And the captivity of Jerusalem that went to Spain will come back and colonize the Negev. So this is a prophecy that has not been fulfilled yet. So I want to leave you with just this particular uh, thing again. Again, this is from our book, Ancient Prophecies Revealed. But here's the current border as it was of 2008. And I'm pretty sure it's like identical or almost identical from 2008 to today, which is 2023. Well, that was a long time ago we wrote this. Anyway, so as you can see, they take and hold southern Lebanon, even into Zarephath. The coastline becomes theirs. Doesn't say anything about the West Bank because there are other prophecies that talk about the West Bank. Seems to be talking about the West Bank being the area where the headquarters of the Antichrist is when he comes, and he's not here yet. Anyway, but then there's prophecies about the Golden Heights and this prophecy about Gilead. So this is that entire area. So it changes from this to this. So I just wanted to share that with you. And we'll, again, we have live studies on Monday nights with Q&As. So we'll get back to that fairly quick. But I wanted to share this with you, this whole idea of what happens with Lebanon. Now, this is one prophecy just from Obadiah, and there are others, like I say, from Zephaniah, Zechariah, and other places that we can look at later. So, right now, I'll just go ahead and say thank you, and we'll see you later.